doesn't know, or they might do, that Drina had a fall, and that's why she's not with us tonight.
Oh dear.
So she's had a fall, and her daughter's looking after her at this minute, David, and hopefully she'll be well soon. She had a fall in the garden by all accounts, isn't that right, Anne?
Yes. She was doing some gardening and fell on the steps, which was a pretty nasty place to fall when it's hard steps, isn't it? Anyway, she's reasonably cheerful now. She's saying she feels better and she's happy of being out of hospital.
Good. Well, give her all our deepest love. And I got to be honest with you, it goes to show, doesn't it, that gardens are some of the dangerous places.
Yeah.
It can be, yeah.
Very dangerous places. Right. Okay. I'll give her our love. Right. Let's start with Peter S. Any news this week, darling?
Not from me, no.
Okay. Right. Okay, Margaret. Margaret let us down today. Margaret's always got something to say. Give us some news, Margaret.
I've got nothing. Sorry. I've had a friend here all week that couldn't go. I had to switch Wi-Fi off.
Ah, right, that friend.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
That friend. She just left on Sunday, but she can't go shopping. She can't go indoors anywhere. So fortunately, the weather was good. So
How does this Wi-Fi affect her?
It affects the whole nervous system.
Right.
It gives her colossal headaches. Makes her physically sick. Just makes her very, very ill.
Oh dear.
Yeah. 800,000 people suffer from this in the UK.
Very modern illness, isn't it, really, if it's Wi-Fi, really.
I don't know how she copes, I really don't. But strangely, I didn't miss the Wi-Fi that much. A bit frustrating at times, but on the whole.
Can I just ask you one quick question? Are you still able to use your mobile phone?
No.
Oh, right.
So it's all radio frequencies then, is it?
I guess so. She was all right with that. I wondered if she would suffer with the microwave, but that
should be shielded anyway. So.
Yeah, that was okay. But it's everywhere. She can't go into a town, where she's surrounded by buildings. She's very limited in what she can do.
Oh dear.
What does she do?
It's awful.
Okay. Thanks for that. Right. Any news from you, Anne, this week?
No, I'm sorry. No.
Oh, well, okay. I'm hoping that one of you has got some news. Right. Peter C.
I've got nothing, I'm afraid.
See, you've ruined my life completely. Just don't get over it. Okay. What about you, David? Anything from you, my friend?
No, sorry, no.
Okay. Right. Okay. Pat, and Andy. Right. Let me down. Pat, if you haven't got any news, just make it up.
Sorry. I failed. I thought of something earlier, but I forgot it since then. So it was, last Friday or Saturday. But
I don't know if that counts.
No, it doesn't count.
Right. Okay. What about you, learned Andy?
No, nothing really, I'm afraid.
Oh dear.
Well, okay. We're gonna get straight into it anyway. So I had a weird box arriving today, and I have no idea what it does. We worked out. It's got my name on it. It's got the address. No idea where it's from. It's a high advanced piece of technology, and I've no idea. And that's my bit of news.
Is it a bomb?
No, basically, it's a high frequency. It's a high frequency portable, advanced Wi-Fi device, and I have no idea what it does. I've got an idea, but it just apparently converts any waves, and it's like life. So anyway, that's my news. So we are going to get sort of started. And today we're going to be looking at Thornborough henges, if anyone's ever come across them. So we've got a set of images and we're going to go left and right. And today is actually an overview. So when I'm talking about an overview, I want us to focus on the aerial photography rather than the actual overall nature of the site, because it's quite complex. So if I can just get straight to Adam mentioned this, and I thought, right, what we were going to be doing this week is cursus monuments, which we should be doing later on towards the end. And I wanted to mention a little bit about sort of a bit more about reconstruction archaeology. And last week it seemed to, I think comments last week was, it's good that we did last week's lecture in 2 parts. So you had 2 lectures for the price of 1 last week. I think there was comments like that. Some of you liked the first part, others of you didn't. And that's basically the way it is. So today we're going to go up, and is this actually on your screens, folks?
Yeah.
The map is there, yes.
Good. That's exactly what I like to hear, Peter. I know it's a map. You get tops for saying it's a map, Peter. Right. So this itself, we're going to be looking at Thornbury henges, not Thornbury henge, Thornbury henges. And as we've got an array of images at the bottom of the screen. We've got 10 images at the screen, and we can either go left or we can go right. So what we're going to do, we're going to go right. And so Thornborough, and this, as you can see from initially from the map in front of us, the survey map, 1 to 50,000 scale map in front of us, this itself is giving you a sort of little bit of impression of gravity of the landscape that these henges are associated with. Now, what we need is another discussion, and we need another lecture about what precisely a henge is, but we'll sort of get to a little bit of the meat and the bones of today. So first things first, before we look at an image, I would like to ascertain whether any of you have actually been to see these sites.
No.
Oh,
And seeing as that most of you are up north, I'm going to say, why not?
well, they weren't out there on private land, weren't they? Until very recently, they weren't open to the public.
Yeah, but you could have actually gone there and trespassed. There was nothing stopping us.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I didn't even know they were there until recently, to be honest. So.
I've never heard of Thornborough henge.
No, I've never heard of them.
But so the one thing I will say is, how many of you have actually visited Stonehenge? That's a really interesting question. And the reason why that's an interesting question is that, okay, Andy, have you visited Stonehenge?
Yes.
Right, okay, but you've not visited your own history, your own doorstep.
No. Well, I
I'm
was
having a
living
bit
down
of
in London then, so it was on my. Well, it was a bit nearer, not a
I've
lot.
been to Maybury henge, which is in Cumbria.
Right, okay, but have you been to Stonehenge? Oh, actually, if I asked if you've been to Stonehenge and you've been to a local site, sort of, that's okay. You know, we'll let you off on that one.
Oh, thank you.
Anne, have you ever been to Stonehenge?
I don't think I've been anywhere. I really didn't know anything about archaeology before I started doing these lectures, and I still haven't really done anything or been anywhere. So I'm just learning from what you were telling me.
Right, okay. No, that's fine. Yeah, one thing I would like to say is that I am due to be visiting Cumbria this year, so you will be able to grab me and hug me and kiss me, and we might be able to visit 1 or 2 of these sites.
That would be
Right.
nice.
That's fine. And Anna will be particularly be up there more about Andrina. and Margaret and Andy. So nobody's left out, and David. So, right, okay, there they are, and it's 3 monuments. Doesn't really show much, so we'll look at this in a few moments. And there they are. They look fairly large, don't they? And they are large sections of our prehistoric landscape, and you can get a great idea of how they dominate the landscape. And Andy's right in what he said, that they were actually owned privately until very, very recently. Look at them. Doesn't that look huge, dominating the landscape? 3 henges in a row.
That suggests to me it's a ley line.
Peter, actually, all the stuff about ley lines, it was going to be a part of what we were doing today, and it's only a little part of what we're doing today. But yeah, you can talk about the sense of an alignment, a sense of a landscape of archaeology. Again, this sort of sense of a landscape of archaeology is something that dominates the Neolithic period.
Well, these people knew about them, you see.
These people knew about energies, and the weird thing as well. We've had a little bit of discussion earlier on about man-made energies, haven't we? We've talked about Wi-Fi, and we've talked about that having effects on people now today. And we've got 800,000 people affected by those Wi-Fi waves and so on, which Margaret was talking about earlier on in regards to a friend of hers. And if we're thinking about those types of waves affecting people today, how much did naturals affect people in the past? And I think that's a really, really important point, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me. So the henges. We start off by saying it's an unusual ancient monument complex. However, let's not really think about the word unusual, because our past was dominated by a great expanse of Neolithic landscape, a great expanse, a complex, interwoven landscape of a landscape that we've mentioned last week, primeval landscape. Stay away from those woods. A landscape that was a landscape of the living, a landscape of settlement, a landscape of ancestors, a landscape of the dead, a very complex world. Everything had its own place. And what we do see in regards to this great henge-like landscape, voila, is that this is only a part of the survival of a prehistoric world. And when we talk about part of the survival of a prehistoric world, we've got to remember the lines of change and the lines that I would refer to in Tim Ingold's Following the Line, where you've got early landscapes, you've got then Neolithic landscapes, and on top of that, Bronze Age landscapes, you've got Iron Age landscape. You sort of get a bit of an idea what we're talking about. So it would be nice to move away from this image again, go back to the Ordnance Survey map, but to try and get to see what the landscape is like today in relation to these monuments. So let's just go back a little bit, and we'll be doing a lot of going back and forth. So you can actually see there that there is actually a river nearby. It's known as the River U-R-E, the River This modern day Thornborough, and there are the modern day roads, and there are the modern day sand and gravel pits. The site itself, and Andy mentioned, I think last week, or somebody mentioned last week, that there was a little bit of quarrying associated with this site until very recently. And it may have been, or it may not have been, the point that we may have lost at least the northern henge there by quarrying for the gravel pit, and we may have lost the middle one as well. Interestingly enough, I know this sounds blonde, right? Don't take that the wrong way. I know this sounds blonde, but when we think about if we would have lost one of the monuments, then it would no longer be 3 henges, it would be 2 henges. Yeah, Carl, that's bloody obvious. When you think about it, this is a 3 henge monument. This is a landscape of prehistory, and with one of those destroyed in the modern age, it would truly change the meaning and understanding of this world. And that's the words that I've just used. The meaning and understanding of this world, it is very important, because we look at the past as presented to us today. We sometimes ignore the fact that the past was very different looking than it is today. The site not only includes the sense of henges, burial grounds and settlements, but also cursus monuments. Now, that's something that I want to do today, and we need to sort of express what those cursus monuments are a little bit. And again, this was just an overview of this site today, and I wanted to do it today just in case that we don't actually do it again, because I thought, right, I've got to move on to something from last week to the substantial world of the Neolithic, and I thought this would be a good place to start, sort of a Neolithic land sort of in the middle of Britain, because we could have just done actually Orkney. So again, when we see this world, we sort of see this landscape, and we look at this, and we sort of interject, and we sort of flow, and we look at this, and we've got that in the middle. We've got Stonehenge in the middle. It sort of gives you sort of a sense of subtlety. So the one on the right hand side is basically the monument, the southern one. The one on the bottom is obviously the one in the central henge. So we could use words like Neolithic ritual landscape, use words like, for example, we could use, for example, a Bronze Age ritual landscape. We could sort of say an Iron Age ritual landscape. All of this, all of what we're seeing is still with us today. And I was going to put some images on of people camped out on the site, and sort of people sort of using it for sort of New Age paganism and stuff. But I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And the reason why I'm not going to do that, and the reason why I'm not going to deem myself, and I'm going to spit it out as it is, Druids have got absolutely nothing to do with the site, and Celts have got nothing to do with this site. Because I know me and Pete have this sort of thing about Celts and so on, and all the rest. But if you want to believe in Celts, you can, right? But the idea of Celts didn't come for another 2,000 years, right? So it's nothing to do with the Celts, right? And it's also nothing to do with Druids. We've got this sort of we've got this one mention of Druids by Tacitus and Cass Dio, when we've got Suetonius Paulinus and Anglesey, which for me is like a total fiction, right? But Druids in a way would have had nothing to do with this site. And in fact, when people do rituals and they dress up as Druids and all the rest of it, for me, it is not really linked to the true history of this site. What was actually going on here was something completely different. And we've got to remember that. But I've also got to slap myself on the face and say, hang on a minute. If people want to be Druids, if people want to be Celts, if people want to do these things, and they want to sort of associate themselves with a new sense of belief with the site, then what I've got to do is not dismiss people's belief structures. So rounding up on all that, if people want to sort of dress Druids and they want to do their thing with this site, then they can. The one advantage with that, not an advantage for archaeology, the one advantage with that is it's breathing life into the site, right? So I'm not gonna say don't. I'm not going to say let's not allow these people to dress up as Druids and all the rest of it. I dress up as a bloody pirate, for God's sake, and nobody's telling me not to do it. So these people, if they want, they can revere this site. I would say that, right? but I've not used those images today. So this monument complex has been called the Stonehenge of the North. Let's sort of, there's no real stones there. Let's call it the Henge of the North. And when we're thinking about this landscape, we're thinking about in the region of 6,000 years ago. So it takes it in the heart of the Neolithic period. It also takes us into the beating heart of our Neolithic Britain. The site itself, now this is quite a bold statement to actually make, and and we're going to do is talk about lots of things to do with sort of quarrying possibly affecting light and sort of times of the year like Beltane and all these other festivals that actually take place here. What we've got to do is we've got to think, and we've got to think that this site is now starting to speak. It's now got a voice. It was owned privately up until very, very recently. Andy, quote Andy again, actually owned by Tarmac, Tarmac North, Tarmac Northern. And they could have, if they wanted to, they could have just applied to the Secretary of State and quarried the whole site out. If they wanted to, they could have done it, but they didn't. Tarmac have actually donated the site to the nation, so we'll give them the credit where it's due. As Associated British Ports donated the only surviving Second World War tower to Archaeology Cymru a few months back, and we've got care of that. So there are good developers out there, unlike HS2. So historical England considers its landscape at Thornborough comparable in ceremonial importance to better known sites. It compares it to better known sites like Stonehenge and Salisbury Plain. It can sort of compares it to sort of Avebury, and it compares it to the wonderful sites of Orkney. Now, if I was given a time machine, and this site has always been known, and this site has always been a tourist attraction, and this site has a tourist information centre there, which people have visited for 100 years, and there'd be more research there. This would put it up there amongst Orkney, Avebury, and Stonehenge with the best of research, right? It's not the best of research, but if we take it as being a very, very important site, I would like to say that Thornbury Henges are above the importance of Avebury and Stonehenge, but not above the importance that we find on Orkney. But then, I'm biased. As importance that this is in the top 3 of best preserved and more or less intact ceremonial landscapes anywhere in the British Isles, and that again above the likes of Newgrange in Ireland as well. In recent decades, there has been public concern about the impact of quarrying by Tarmac on this great ritual landscape. And things changed. Things did change. Following an agreement originally reached in 2016, the 2 henges, right? Not all 3, but I thought all 3 were actually owned, but 2 henges owned by Tarmac, as well as surrounding land owned by local company Lightwater Holdings, passed into the control of British Heritage in 2023. So in other words, this is new for us. In other words, it's only now that we'll be able to actually go and have deep intercourse with the site and love it and sort of appreciate it for what it's worth. However, there is a problem with that. Allowing members of the public carte blanche on the site does have its downside, and obviously with added vision, dog walking, people on mountain bikes, even just people walking on it, is going to damage the site. So it has to be treated with respect with any sort of landscape, and we've got to remember like this when we approach it from this sort of Druids and sort of Celts and things that bump into the night. When people are sort of clambering all over the site, was this what the site was meant to be out in the first place? were people meant to clamber on those banks, and were people meant to do all these things with the site? And my answer probably no, because the level of height of the banks, the level of preservation there, that maybe people were probably kept away. And this if it's henge ritualistic monument, in some senses it was a place for the ancestors to go to, rather than the actual physical living and the physical being. But that is an embodiment of an idea rather than archaeological fact. And the other thing as well is we must remember that my interpretation is as good as most interpretations in regards to the fact that this site would have been used for different purposes over different periods, over different lengths of time. Remember, this site has been with us for now 6,000 years. That's something very special. And we don't need stones, and we don't need Avebury to actually prove that something can last a long time. Permanence, that's an issue I talk about a fair bit. This is the central one. So there we go, the central one, the central henge. And I'm gonna chuck a concept at you, which is sometimes one of my deep concepts. And the concept is that permanence doesn't necessarily mean to be stone. Right, permanence of landscape is as you're seeing. And okay, what we mean by this is that Stonehenge, you've got these stones sticking out. Right now, if the stones at Stonehenge weren't there, then it would just be a henge, and it would be like this. Stonehenge would be like this, but it wouldn't be called Stonehenge. It'd be called henge. It'd be called henge, you know. And all the souls be plain. If you take away all land directly in and around Stonehenge, what you're left with is a load of humps and bumps, which are good enough to see the sense of ritualistic, to see the sense of connected landscape. Ritualistic and connected landscapes are two different analogies. Ritualistic is basically, you could think about ceremonial, you could think about offerings, you could think about sacrifices and whatever you want to do. Connected is that a sense of ownership, a sense of gravitas, a sense of belonging. And this is a sense of belonging that I built that bank and the ditch. And that sort of, this is that sort of connectedness with this. And so what got is that with this, and with all of this, what we do actually mention is, it does mention the idea of a cursus monument, right? So if we go back again, and we see that there's something connecting these, and if we go back to this, and we see the three monuments back on this image. So the Thornborough cursus is the oldest and largest ancient monument at Thornborough. It is almost a mile in extent and runs from Thornborough village under the later central henge and terminates close to the River in a broadly east-west alignment. So in other words, there is a monument that transects the alignment of the three henges. So the cursus monument transects from Thornborough through the henge all the way to the river. This is a cursus monument. And again, that sort of that one type of site that we were going to mention, cursus monuments, sure we'll give a little bit of a good go after the break. Cursuses are perhaps the most enigmatic of ancient monuments. On images coming up, typically comprise two parallel arches. the larger of which can be a mile or more in extent, cut to create a cigar-shaped enclosure. Way of putting it. Typically, burial mounds and mortuary enclosures are found alongside Cursus monuments, but they are usually late. So this sort of sense of a landscape, and you can't actually see it on there at this minute from this sort of aerial view, right? It is there. Back to the Cursus monuments. So what we usually do with Cursus monuments and sort of henge monuments is we see that over time there are burial monuments, there are various other things of different different meanings within this landscape. Cursus monuments, ages and status alongside other ancient monuments of its kind has led to the site being labelled as the Stonehenge of the North. So obviously back to these henges now. So one clear thing, if we sort of go the other end and we sort of get an idea of these henges, and what we then do, we talk about sort of changes of the landscape and quarrying, and that's a big argument, which can then in a way sort of link with the what went on with Stonehenge, and in many ways the battle to save our history and archaeology in Britain is never ending. And you know, with things like, with statements like, when a site's been archaeologically excavated, it's no longer deemed an archaeological site, therefore we can we've recorded it and we can build on it, that type of thing. So it's a to excavate an archaeological site these days, but that's another point altogether. So if we go back through these images, which I'm sure we can look at again, and this is a 3D LiDAR image of the henges. You can actually see that they're sort of similar in size, but they're slightly different. All three are slightly different. You can see the southern one has got a ditch and sort of a berm, or in other words, a buff, a ditch, a berm, or a buff, and then you've got a bank, and then what you've got here, you've got a ditch in the. So if we zoom in that there, we've got a bank, we've got a berm, we've got a ditch, and we've got this thing in the middle, and then that thing. So the three henges are similar in size.
Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, there's not much sign of the cursus on that LiDAR image, is there?
There's no sign of the cursus on that LiDAR image at all. It looks like it's been completely ploughed and yes, exactly. It seems that it's been completely ploughed out, but you can actually see something slight there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
It's really
Very
faint.
faint. Yeah.
It's really faint, and I'm glad you interjected there, because we completely forgot about the Cursus monument on that moment. But again, the Cursus monument with this site will actually come up again. So we're not this again, as I said, Peter. This was this bit of an overview today of this great site, and this is again, Peter, the struggle that I've got with the Neolithic period. There's much to say about it, that sometimes we've got overviews, and it was our other site in Derbyshire, and you know, we looked at that and we thought, you know, we could more with this, and you know, when we do Salisbury Hill, and when we've looked you know, briefly at Salisbury Hill, and you know, looking at Stonehenge, and we can spend 4 weeks on Stonehenge. We can't, so many sites to go through. But yeah, but we will look at that Cursus monument again. Yeah, I'm glad you sort of mentioned that. You can actually see it there, just a little bit, if you squint your eyes. So anyway, these themselves are in the region of, you know, 240 meters in diameter, and if you look, they've all got sort of two entrances, sort of there, that one. Oh, if we look at this one, this is even. And Peter can keep going on about, and there we go. We got a Cursus monument there going there. You can actually see that there now, right? You can see that. if
Yeah.
that's drawn properly. You can see the alignments of the three sites, which is something completely different altogether. So what we've got two entrances sort of situated directly opposite each other. And with the henges are located around 550 meters on an approximate northwest-southwest alignment. Although there is curious dogleg in the layout, and we can clearly see that if we go with this, and it's talking about this monument as actually aligned Orion's belt, and they explain it. It's aligned with the Orion's belt, and that sort of explains the dogleg. But can you remember another site that we looked at which had Orion's belt? A certain site in Scotland, in Aberdeen, a Mesolithic site, and you know it's that idea that these things might be linked to the celestial heavens, which is fine. That might be one interpretation of it. We're not going to dismiss that. In fact, it's not wise for me to dismiss any of these theories in regards to this Neolithic period, because it's such a long time ago. It's such that most of the theories could actually be right. It could be that it's a bit like a football team. Eventually Wales will beat England in an international football game, right? It'll happen, right? So if you play out these scenarios far and long enough, you can sort of work out how these sort of link in with the heavens. From one point of view and another point of view. And the other thing, what I'm going to say is that it could actually be likely that it could be coincidence that the center is around 550 meters away from equally to the southern one as well. So you could start to think. My technology went a bit then. You could start to think that some of this is coincidental, but then again, it could be deliberate. But the one thing that we've got to look at is again this undoubtable fact that when this was planned, it probably wasn't planned to look like this. Its final form. And I'm going to say that because. Well, if you want to look at a site like this and you want to think about something like Stonehenge perceived as being as it was when it was first planned 2,000 years before it eventually became the site that it did become. And I'm going to say that when you look at something like this, let's think about it as being something that was all planned and this is the way it was meant to look. You know, we've got to be very careful with our interpretations of these sites. And it may have been that one person built a henge and they thought, oh, right, we'll build another one. How do we know there's not a fourth one? How do we know there's not a fifth one? There could be 20 in a row, right? Except all the others have been wiped off the face of the earth. You mentioned the Cursus monument earlier on. Well, that's practically gone. So what we've got to do, we've got to put a lot on what we're seeing, but we've also got to put a lot on what we're not seeing, right? Because there might be a lot more to this than meets the eye, right? So altogether, the monument extends for more than a mile, which is quite amazing. So it puts it as an amazing length of landscape. So archaeological excavation of the central henge. So what we need to do, we need to sort of get an image of our central henge, right? So archaeological excavation of the central henge has taken place. It has been suggested that its banks were covered with locally mined gypsum, with the resulting white sheen being striking and visible for miles around. Now that's interesting. The color white, and it can't just be ignored, that statement, because naturally occurring gypsum, as we know, it's used to building industry today. It's got a bit of a white sheen. When when, for example, in West Wales, lots of the monuments in West Wales were actually covered in white sort of quartz. And what we see is the color sort of white very prominent in Cornwall as well. We see little islands in the Hebridean archipelago where when churches are established, people bring white stones to them, right? Another example, it's quite likely that Silbury Hill looked like a big white pale breast projected on the landscape. We could think also of West Kennet Longbarrow with the white sort of chalk and the flint. We're thinking then in the Christian period, the color white used to whitewash the outside of churches. White is not just to be seen as something to be seen. White could be seen as something to give a sense of longevity. It could be something that people thought looked good. It could replicate the stars in the cosmos as being white and shining and so on. So we're loving this sort of color white. And when we think about colors in Central America, red is predominant, right? Red is predominant. We could think of other cultures that use other colors as dominant, but again, this sort of exciting idea that the banks were white, we're liking that. We're getting a connection with that. A double alignment of pits, possibly evidence of a timber processional avenue, extends from the southern henge. Now, I do believe I've got an image of some of these things. Hang on a minute, where there it is. Now, this is, it's got all these other little things on here, little sort of alignments and so on. Actually, this is something that somebody produced for a website out there, because get an idea of sort of different theories and sort of differences with this site. So again, you could squint your eyes and you think sort of the dog leg in the layout appears to cause the layout, as we've already mentioned, to mirror the 3 stars of Orion's belt. Exact purpose of the henges is unclear, but I think that we've given a few ideas for the purpose of these henges. Though archaeological finds suggest that they served economic and social purposes as well as astrological ones, and other ideas that we might not be able to understand today. Now that leads us into something really interesting, sort of away from my notes a minute, and sort of looking at this. Now, this is, this Ordnance Survey map. This is probably an Ordnance Survey, not an early sort of cruder Ordnance Survey map from, I would say, about 1840, 1830 or something like that. And this is rather interesting because it actually shows the marked Roman camps. And again, what I was saying the other week is that everything to historians at one stage was classed as Roman, everything Roman. And interesting enough, it sort of gives an idea of little tracks and the river and sort of there's Thornborough there. It's marked a little bit bigger, Thornborough Common. And I'm liking to think that there may have been more of an extent. I'm just going to chuck it out there, just as an idea that there may have been maybe the henge. If you look there at that place called Nosterfield is smack bang in where there could have been another henge. Naturally, it's completely left us, but you can see that there on the bottom end of the screen, there is something else.
Carl,
Yeah, go for it.
just talking about the other one on the above the Nesterfield there, or Nosterfield. If you look on Google Maps, there's a
Yeah.
circular woodland just on the other side of Nosterfield, which is doesn't show on this map, but the scale looks about the same distance. That looks suspiciously like another one.
Interesting. And you know what? I don't like to say I'm right, but Andy, the point is, you know the point I'm trying to make, whether I'm right or wrong. It's just that sometimes what we do in our community, we take what we see, and we don't really extend what there could be. And it's a really good point that you've made, and I made, that what we should always do is try to expand our minds by going beyond the boundaries of the actual monuments actually being presented to us. It's a really good contribution that both of us have just made there. You can actually clearly see something down there. And do you know what I want to do is in the break, right? When you're talking about Google Images, so if I got to type on Google, when we're sort of doing our questions, Andy, we're going to look at that.
Yeah, it's Google Maps.
Google Maps.
Google Maps. Go find Thornborough and then switch it on to the aerial view. You'll be able to see it.
I will. We're gonna do that in a break. When we're doing questions, we're gonna actually do that in a break. So we'll do. I'm gonna write that down. Thornborough, Google. We're gonna do that. Right. Thanks for that. We won't talk any about that now, but we definitely will. So again, our interpretation. This is actually Andy and I have just made a point. Our interpretation today is very different from the interpretation made of these 200 years ago, because just as recent as 200 years ago, remember, these sites have been here 6,000 years. So if you think about 200 years, 6,000 years, that's like, right, okay, it's not much, is it? It's like couple of hours have gone in that 24-hour time frame. We're looking in the past 200 years, and we're thinking that 200 years ago they thought they were Roman camps. They didn't think that they were Neolithic. Very interesting point there. So again, the purpose of the henges were again reflecting mindsets and ideas of the landscape and sort of energies. I've gone away from this sort of energy thing, and we'll mention Beltane in a minute, and sort of that sort of energy of Beltane, and sort of, I don't think we can dismiss. I don't think we can dismiss the ideas now, because Margaret's friend. We're going to keep going back to your friend Margaret. Margaret is freaked out by Wi-Fi, and it makes her ill and it affects her skin, and she's got to stay away from it. Well, got to be honest with you, Margaret, that's not powerful, is it? But so the pull of and if that's doing that damage, so the pull of the Earth's energies, Margaret, I'm sure that's going to have more power. Do you see what I'm trying to get at? So again, this alignment and the sort of the sense of alignment and the sense of connectedness is fraught by let's not ignore possibilities, right? So it also reflects the different perpendicular alignments of the mid-winter sunset and mid-summer sunrise. So we're going to look at Beltane in a moment. And again, if we go to this again, we go to this quite a poor image, but it's all right, it'll do. So what we've got, one of the alignments via another henge site at Nunwick, with the Devil's Arrow away at Boroughbridge. So we've got a talk of another alignment with another site somewhere else. When we actually come looking at this, the northern henge is carryover grown. However, we know it looked like that. There it is. So the LiDAR is very good for sort of cutting through trees. And the sort of sense of being able to read through trees without removing the trees is a good thing, right? The trees have been there for a long time. So the northern henge is currently overgrown with trees, but is one of the best preserved henges in Britain. because it is preserved by the fact that it's protected by the trees. The southern henges are apparently, interesting enough, it doesn't look it, but that the one in the north is preserved than the one in the middle, and the one in the south, right? And do you know one thing I'm struggling with? I'm trying to remember that site in Derbyshire. Was it Arbor? Is that right? Does that ring a bell? Remember the one we did weeks ago? Is it Arbor?
Below.
That's the one.
Below.
Thank you. You were listening to the lecture, Arbo. You know, this one actually looks like Arbor. Remember Arbor? That looks like Arbor. Arbor, we described that as being quite poorly preserved, but you know, they're saying that actually the northern one is better preserved than the other two. So I would obviously like more information about that, and we'll obviously come back to this again if we sort of go that. So obviously there's the northern one surrounded by trees, the middle one, and if we look at how these pan out, you know, when you look at these aerial views, it looks that the southern one, in a certain light, doesn't look as well preserved as it looks in another light, right? So it really depends what sort of image we're actually looking at. But the central and the southern henges are in poorer condition, although the banks of the henges are still quite prominent, especially in the case of the central henge, as that takes. To gain a full appreciation of the scale of the monument is best viewed from the air, and that's exactly why we're doing it from the air. Now, what I would like to do is, obviously, I've got my work cut out in the break because I've got to get the Google stuff down. We've obviously got to ask questions. I want to do a little bit about cursus monuments this week, and I'm gonna actually bring forward not the henge stuff I was going to do, not the cursus stuff I was going to do tonight, but I'll bring forward cursus monument stuff for Thornbury Henge. So it's sort of directly linked. So again, Beltane. Now, Beltane is a celebration that looks at sort of May, beginning of May. All three of the Thornborough henges and the narrow strip of land connecting them are scaled monuments. However, prior to the 2023 developments, the owners of the site not generally permit public access. Since 2004, however, an exception was made by Tarmac in relation to their land, which allowed people to attend an annual event in celebration of the Gaelic festival of Beltane. Now, let's just, it would be nice to sort of try and think about these sort of various celebrations that okay. I have dismissed the Druidic thing, and I have, you know, I'm not too keen on my Celts, but I'm done today is sort of slot them into something. So, you know, this Druidic thing sort of post sort of the birth of Christ, okay, after 4 BC, remember that from last week. So obviously these sites existed 4,000 years before that. So if there's any with the Druids, they're not right. So there you go. So putting a little bit of something in there, take of it what you will. So Pete, going on about the Celts. Well, traditionally the Celts is an idea of an invasion, people coming over from Europe, displacing people in Britain. I don't agree with that, but culturally, this word Celtic is sort of a cultural term, right? That will meet in the middle. But obviously that's sort of that in a way is sort of 3,000 years after this type of site, right? So if we want to think about Beltane, what exact Beltane, right? Let's just sort of try and discuss this Beltane thing a little bit. Let's do something else for a change. Gaelic May Day holiday festival, commonly observed on the 1st of May. The festival falls midway between the spring equinox and summer solstice in the northern hemispheres. The festival name is synonymous with the month marking the start of summer in Ireland. Well, it is Ireland after all. And basically, May being May Nay Beltane. Historically, it was widely observed throughout Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. Is observed by a few people in Wales. I do know that because I've observed it. So Beltane is mentioned in the earliest Irish literature and is associated with important events in Irish mythology, also known as First of Summer, Ket's Hamhain, as in Beltane, Ket's Hamhain. It marked the beginning of summer and was when cattle were driven out to the summer pastures. Rituals were performed to protect cattle, people, and crops, and to encourage growth. Special bonfires were kindled, whose flames, smoke, and ashes were deemed to have protective powers. The people and their cattle would walk around or between bonfires, and sometimes over the flames or embers. You can keep that. And sometimes leap over. We say it again. All household fires would be doused and then relit from the belt bonfire. These gatherings would be accompanied by a feast, and some of the food and drink would be offered to the ARC, which basically the direct translation of what an ARC is basically a supernatural race in mythology. Doors, windows, byres, livestock would be decorated with yellow mayflowers, perhaps because they evoked fire. In parts of Ireland, people would make a May bush, typically a thorn bush or branch decorated with flowers, ribbons, bright shells, and rush lights. Holy wells were also visited, while Beltane Dew was thought to bring beauty and maintain youthfulness. Many of these customs were part of May Day or midsummer festivals in parts of Great Britain and Europe. Can I just tell you a little bit of a story about that? It mentioned primarily that Beltane's about, to do with the Irish and the Scot and so on. It didn't mention Cymru, Wales at all there. But I'll tell you a little bit of a legend quickly. In Llantwit Major, in the Vale of Glamorgan, I used to talk about this on my ghost walks. In Llantwit Major in the Vale of Glamorgan, they used to build 2 fires at Beltane, 1st of May, and they used to make the cattle walk very close to these fires, right? It would basically kill any bugs in their hair. But there is another one that they would chuck any calves that they didn't want directly into the fire, and that was a tradition that actually occurred up until the past few hundred years when it was actually banned. And that's a festival that usually occur in Llantwit Major and the Vale of Glamorgan. And then when some of the cows would go up in flames as well, because in the Vale of Glamorgan they would build the fires very close to each other, so some cows would go up in flames, right? They actually banned that. So what the local farmers said, what we'll do, we'll make the cows walk over hot coals. That also making some of the cows lame and having to be slaughtered. That was stopped as well. So this idea of Beltane is something that has actually come into the modern day and age. And I thought I'd share that with you. On that note, I have been rabbiting on for a whole hour, so I would like to. What we got to do still about this site, we've got to talk a little bit about quarry and the site and how the site has managed to be spared and saved from the quarry, and just a bit of archaeology. I got to look at this image now. I've got to make a quick phone call, and I've also got to re-evolve the lecture around the Cursus Monument to do with this site. Maybe I should have done that anyway. But we'll have some questions in the meanwhile anyway. So that's what we're going to do. And I've lost my power a second, so I'm going to have to reboot. And we'll go over to now.
Carl,
Yeah, go for it. I'm just putting
Carl.
my power back on. Yeah, got it.
No,
So,
I'm going to have to excuse myself because I had about 4 hours sleep last night. I've been walking all day. I just can't keep awake, even though it's interesting. So I do apologise, and I'll see you next week.
before you go, do you want to ask if there's any? Do you want to ask any questions? Joe, go for it.
Not really, no. As I say, I've been half asleep. I'm really hopeless tonight. I'm sorry.
Look, don't worry about it, Anne. You never apologise, me love, because we love having your company. And give my deepest love to Drina from all of us,
I will.
myself, David, Margaret, Andy, Peter, all of us. So that's great.
I will. I'll tell her tomorrow. Okay. Good night then.
Oh, can you get us some flowers as well? Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye. Right. Okay. That's not like Anne.
She did look tired.
Yes, she did. Right, David, anything you'd like to ask at this
No,
stage,
thank
lovely?
you.
Okay. Right, Margaret.
Well, I'm a bit confused about henges, earthworks, cursus monuments. I believe a cursus, why is it called a monument? It's just a ditch, isn't it?
Oh, how dare you! Right, we'll look at what I need to do. Okay, I wanted to speed into looking at a monument today, because we've been doing sort of other stuff. Yeah, actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the little board up in after the break, and we're going to sort of look a little bit at sort of the differences in these sites. I think, yeah, let's just do a little bit of that. Let's just sort of do a little bit of a tick box, maybe a bit of a refresher. I'll do that one. Yeah, we'll do that after the break. Anything else, Margaret?
Well, near the Maybury henge that I mentioned, which is quite impressive actually, the bank is about 3 meters high, and it's built using loads of coloured pebbles from the River Eden. And just near to it is an earthwork henge called King Arthur's Round Table. That was built about 2000 BC. And it's called King Arthur's Round Table because they reckon that later it was used for jousting. And they do look a bit like an arena, don't they?
Yes, they do. They do.
Hmm.
They do. I've got an absolutely brilliant image of the thorn cursus on here. So I've got to try and get that on here. So yeah. So can you give me the name of that site?
Maybury.
How'd you spell it?
Maybury, Mayburgh.
Yeah.
Henge.
Right. Okay. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to include all this tonight, but I will try and get onto this. Right. Okay. Yeah. We'll see what we can do. I got a few things I got to do. We've got Thornborough, Google, Kirkus, the differences in the sites. Okay, I've got to do that. And to Maybury henge, I want to show you all an image of that because I know you're all curious. I've got to get some images of our site at Thornborough as well. So I might actually say to you all, if you give me a little bit longer, probably a bit more than 10. Andy, anything you'd like to say? He's gone.
Sorry, my computer's running a bit slow at the moment. So every time I click on anything, nothing happens for about 2 minutes. But no, nothing to add. Thank you.
All right. Okay. That's our Peter C.
No, I'm looking forward to talking about the cursus a bit because I think they're really weird. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
That's what we're supposed to be doing this week. But what I'm going to do, right? We've got to lead into.
Don't let me pressure you.
Yeah, I feel under pressure. I'm gutted. Let's just sort of do what we can after the break, and just even if it's a little bit, that's fine. Right. So okay, Pat.
I was just going to make sure a hinge is a flat circle, and then moving up in the center is a ditch, and then a bank, and then you're outside the hinge.
Right, run up. Right, so yeah, basically the platform, ditch, bank, and you're outside the henge. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's do a proper cross section across it. Flat area, bank, ditch, flat area, ditch, bank, outside. That's a cross section of a henge.
Right.
We're this is what we've got to do. We've got to do some on the screen. You got my scribbles after this.
Okay.
Right, Peter.
The relationship with Orion's belt. I didn't realize until it was mentioned, and then I realized just how true that is. The three henges in line and Orion's 3 stars in line. It seems it must be a connection, because they would have seen them as well. And we see them, Orion, I would see regularly through my back kitchen window every night. And I always looked for the constellation of Orion.
You know, I think, you know, when you're saying that, and I think in some ways we miss it. And what I mean by that, there's so much given to the 3 pyramids at Giza.
Yeah,
linked
they're thought to
Orion.
be similar,
Yeah.
a similar connection. Yes.
Yeah. So we talk a lot of that, and when we were looking at our site at Warren Field near Aberdeen, our Mesolithic site, obviously that was slightly askew, and we were talking about Orion with that, and that was a Mesolithic site with timber posts in holes and so on. And we did actually have a little. There was another class that I did. I'm trying to close my eyes, think about all this. There was another class that we did when we did following the line. And I said to the people who did my following the line thing on a Wednesday for an hour between 6 and 7, I said, is there archaeological evidence from the past by looking up at the sky? And yeah, we could clearly see, because, you know, we've got sort of manifestations on the ground, and obviously the moon itself does control seasons and everything else. And I think in ways we don't give as much credence to the celestial bodies. What we do, we say astronomy and all the rest of it. When I say celestial bodies, we give as much credence to celestial bodies as we do to sort of saying, you know, summer solstice and the midwinter sunrise and all the rest of it. We talk so much about that, but we don't talk about all these other things. And I think what we should be talking about more about these other things. But it's just, what there is an obsession. And sometimes when there's an obsession with something, you don't allow your mind open and understand everything else. So on that note, what we're going to do, I've got my work cut out. I'm going to, it's now 8:50. And what we'll do, we're going to come back just after 9. Okay. So let me poddle on, talk amongst yourselves, and I'll be back. Lot to do. It is a bit like Time Team. I got to do in 10 minutes. Speak to you in a minute.
Oh.
Have you heard about those strange balloon things that they've been shooting down over America that they think are from China? Pete?
Or UFOs.
Well, why are they
Yes.
shooting them? It costs apparently $3,000 to use one of their missiles to shoot them down.
Well, they're so worried about
Like 300,000.
security, aren't they?
Oh,
People seeing what they're doing, what they've got and what they haven't got. And America is
do
really...
they know for sure that they're all from China?
As far as I know, you
Yeah.
know that the one that they shot down that went right across America and ended up in the Atlantic, that they shot down over the sea, that's definitely a Chinese one. But the other three, they haven't managed to recover yet.
Oh, well, that was a Chinese weather balloon, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Oh,
Or so the Chinese said.
uh,
but you never know. It's an awful lot of fuss. You know, when it was floating all the way across right over there, you know, secret sites in Montana and all the rest of it, thinking, well, just shoot it down. What's the problem? You only need a gun. It's only a
oh, yeah,
it's only
seems-
filled with some gas. It'll soon come down. What's the big deal?
they don't need a Sidewinder missile, do they really?
No, they don't. So, and also, you know, there's that many satellites up there. I'm sure the Chinese have got lots of pictures of everything already. So
Well, exactly.
it's a bit weird.
This makes you realize that if there were genuine UFOs suddenly appeared, they would shoot them straight away, wouldn't they? They'd have no chance.
Well, I would like to think that if they got the advanced technology to be able to fly here from millions of miles away, they'd probably be able to defend themselves a bit better.
They wouldn't use a piffling little balloon, would they? To land?
Probably not, no. They said they'd also shot one down over Canada, I think, as well, which I'm thinking,
Yeah.
why are the Americans shooting one down over Canada?
Oh.
Unless they have some special arrangement, of course.
Mm.
Well, in Canada, there are American Army sites.
Hmm.
When I was at sea, we were at Fort Churchill, and just outside of Fort Churchill is a major US Army base. And we were allowed to go to the base to have a look at the film in their theater, in the Igloo Theater of the US Army base.
Well, they've got one on Cuba as well, haven't they? But they're not allowed to go into Cuba. It
No.
has to be supplied from Florida.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Everybody's spying on everybody else.
Well, so they'd have you believe, yeah.
Well, I dare say we're spying on
No, I'm sure we are.
them, aren't we, for sure?
There's plenty of satellites up there watching everything.
Yeah. It's a mad, mad world.
Yeah.
It certainly is.
Mm. Reading about these henges, apparently when they were doing the Crossrail thing in London, they found a massive one in East London under a park 3 years ago.
I remember something about that.
Yeah, a really big one.
So I wonder who leveled that one off then on the surface.
I don't know.
The good old Victorians.
Ah, yes, probably. Have you heard HS2 is no longer coming to Manchester, is it? Was it Manchester? I think they should have started building in the north, HS2, just to make sure it was going to be in the north. Why didn't they start in the north rather than in London?
Yeah.
You kind of always knew it wasn't going to happen, didn't you?
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because every time they've ever put any infrastructure in any country, it's always been beneficial to the country. So it seems a bit daft not doing, but and it always costs a fortune. But
it's always triple what they originally said.
Yeah, it is. I don't see the price. It's going just, I can't remember how far it's going now. It's just somewhere near Birmingham, isn't it? It's going to, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And that'll make a big difference. I think it knocks about 20 minutes off the train time or something,
yeah.
doesn't it? So,
Be quiet, Tossie. Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about it before because you think, oh, well, yeah, the southeast, you know, there's like inside the M25, there's more people live there than the whole of Scotland, and that's got like 8 million or so. And the southeast is a highly populated area, so there's bound to be more infrastructure and intensity and industry and wealth down there. And then you find out if you put kind of Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, Leeds, and all that lot together, it's nearly 10 million.
Yeah.
You know, and you get, oh, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a
But
bit to
you
be said
don't
about
find
it.
any potholes in the roads in London,
Oh, you do.
do you?
Yeah,
Because they're shocking
definitely
up
do, yeah.
here.
It depends which council area you're in. Some of the councils are blooming stupid financially down there.
Mm.
When we used to live in an area called Barnet,
Oh,
the area, the council area is Barnet, and they lost 18 million when the Icelandic banks collapsed. You know, which was ridiculous because they shouldn't have even been invested in them. You know, it's a very daft thing to get involved in.
How long ago was that? About 20 years ago?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think we had money with the Icelandic bank.
Well, they were offering
ISA.
high interest rates, so a lot of the financial groups went in. But the basic things with when you're investing in things is you look at, have they got, you know, more assets than they've got debts? And with the Icelandic banks, they didn't have any assets. So the golden rule is don't invest if they haven't got any assets, because if anything goes wrong, there's nothing there to back it up with. And that's what happened when they had that financial crisis. Was it 2007, something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
They just collapsed.
Must be, yeah.
I think I've managed to crack it, guys. So just give me a second. We'll get. By the way, Orkney Council, right? They had invested their entire budget, a year's budget, in an Icelandic bank.
Right. Yeah.
So they lost it all. So the island was sort of 20 million pounds. That was their entire tax take for that year or whatever.
Yeah.
They did it all.
Yeah.
So give me a sec. We'll be back now.
Oh, you do need a haircut, Pete. It's quite long at the sides, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Does it go right round the back?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just missing that bit up there.
I gotta be honest with you. Stop encouraging him, love, please. Right,
You could grow at the back and tie it in a little ponytail, couldn't you?
Right, so folks, I have managed to track down everything. It's taken a bit longer than I thought. No, I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm in one of these new Lucozade Cherry Blasts.
Not too much sugar for you, I hope.
It's got high caffeine and vitamin B3.
Oh.
I just opened it. It tastes a bit flat. Anyway, right. So, so what I've managed to do, the next bit, we've got the Google Thornborough image. We have got differences in Cursus and Henge monuments. We've got the Mayburgh Henge. We've got the Thornborough Cursus monument, and we got a general talk about Cursus monuments leading us on to next week. Other than that, I've done bugger all. Right, so hopefully it'll work. And I think we need to crack on. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get onto Google, and let's just try and get that sharing and see what we can actually see from the aerial photographic landscape. And I think I've lost a will to live. Right, okay, so here we go. We don't want that. We want to go there. I do believe I check on the map cursor, and hopefully, right, okay, this is, so if we press that there, and we press on that, and hopefully, so this is our aerial view. So what we've got the one monument there, and you in a minute. We've got the southern one there, we've got the middle one, the central one, and we've got the one covered in trees, right? So the point I was making was, if you sort of zoom out a little bit, and if you look a bit further up there, you've got Norst Field, and just above that you've got a little lake, a quarry, right? So if you think about it, if there was any other in existence, it's been quarried and erased from human imagination. So that's the point. And then the other thing I'd make is, if you look further south, right? If you look further south, practically where there could be another henge, it's sort of, there's other activity going on. The point is, Andy was saying something. So, Andy, what was your point?
No, mine was the north of the village. I thought it was more trees, but you're right. It's a gravel pit, so it's gone.
It's a gravel. But
Yeah.
but even there, Andy,
Shit.
right? That's the whole point. Practically a little bit south. That's where the other one should be, and it would be quarried out.
Yeah, it's suspiciously round and in the same spot, so same distance.
And actually, Andy, right? That's a really good point. And maybe that was a perfect place to quarry.
Yeah.
Not good. But yeah, the point is made. So you can see those three within a landscape. They do stand out quite a lot. Now,
there's a well within the line there, just a bit north of that. There's a well.
Where's the well?
Up a little bit more farther north.
Where? Oh, well.
There.
Oh yeah.
That's a place called Well, but there's obviously got a well there, haven't they?
Yeah.
Well, obviously,
Well,
yes.
well.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
So the issue, the other issue was, before we do we're not doing a Thornborough Cursus monument at this moment, right? Because we've got other stuff to do. About Peter saying about the other Peter saying about, you can't really see the Cursus monument, and no, you can't really see the Cursus monument within the landscape, right? You could sort of squint your eyes and you can think, oh, right, but you can't really do anything at this moment. But what we do have is, basically, there should be a Cursus monument running from Thornborough all the way through to the south, the central monument here, all the way to the river here, but it's not there. You don't see it at this moment, right? The point. Now you can see it if the crops are high enough, so I'm told, but that is another part of this lecture. So what I want us to do now, I want us to come out of this again, and I need to get to my stop that. The question that was raised earlier on about this, the differences with these Cursus monuments and henges and so on. Now, I would just do a quick little thing to sort of get this into our minds. So if we share, we can go with the whiteboard and go with this. And, I can remember the days of Skype. We had nothing like this. In fact, Andy, right, if pandemic never happened, we'd still be using Skype.
Yep.
So we'd have never used Zoom. So one thing about henge monuments, they're usually round, or they can be slightly egg shaped, right? With the example below, that was slightly egg shaped, and the other one, the south henge, even though it looks really circular, it sort of looks slightly egg shaped. The south henge at Thornborough, you'll probably see that when we look at the images again. Anyway,
Blank
so we've
screen at the
established
moment.
that's the sort of overall shape of a henge monument. So a henge monument, in effect, is a so we get that there is a bank that inevitably there sometimes seems to be a berm or a flat area like this, and then it comes back along. So we'll shorten the diameter of this anyway, and it can sometimes go like this, and you've got another berm, and we've just run out of space for a bank. So that's basically the average henge monument, and basically outside here as well, that's flat land, that's flat. So in other words, they've taken the soil from here to create this bank. When we look at the Mayborough henge in Cumbria, it's in this as well. Now, if I can remember my reading on the henge monuments, some henge monuments can be 10 meters in diameter, which it seems a bit small for me. But you can get henge monuments, 200 meters in diameter and so on. So they can be varying different sizes in diameter. So that's basically a henge monument. And the other question is this thing banging around, I think it was either Pat or Margaret's head, about a Cursus monument. Now, let's just sort of just gently chuck something about Cursus monuments, because we're doing a lot more next week. Set examples from this week. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn that computer off now because I don't on. So if we scrub all this now, quick, and there we go. So monument can, if you're looking from above, they can range over 4 miles, a mile, and so on. Cursus might be 100 meters in length, and basically what they are an arrangement of a bank, right, with basically a ditch on the outside, and then the ditch on the outside is actually what creates the bank, right? Now, some of these can be 200 meters long, others can be 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 miles long. The one in Dorset is big, right? And these are called Cursus monuments. Now, you could sort of vary where the bank and the ditch is. However, the main thing is if we take away this, right, the main thing is in fact the bank. That's what we're interested in. That's really what survives of Cursus monuments. The stuff on the outside has long since eroded in or been filled or gone or disappeared, right? So that's gone. It is kaput. So what you do see is the bank where the ticks are. What is the other point? Okay, so if you think about these monuments, you can see that. Hang on. Doop. Go on. Good. If you see, the main thing is that they are continuous. There's no entrance exit, right? And that is what makes Cursus monuments very, very unique. So in other words, in section, you could basically say this is there are exceptions to the rule. I'm thinking ditch inside occasionally, but that's something else. So if we go ditch, bank, do bank, ditch, do, and that's all they are. But they're continuous bank. Now, there is a sense of mystery about them, but more about that sort of sense of mystery towards the end today and next week. So we still got the Cursus monument at Thornbury to look at, but before we actually go there, we need to look at this Mayborough henge. Now, obviously, I have knocked something out of the lecture today. It was to do with Neolithic reconstruction stuff, but that's knocked out the lecture. We'll do that another time. And next week, I've decided that I want us to keep flowing with the Neolithic. We're going to be doing the barrow diggers the following week, right? Because I want us to keep this flow going. So when we come back to the barrow diggers, we're a little bit sort of we want to do something else. So that's why we'll be doing that after next week, and Cursus monuments and all that sort of palaver next week. Seeing some more stuff. I know we've done Cursus monuments before, but I want us to sort of do more detail. So that off now. So if we go back to where I was, and sort of here we go, and I've lost a plot. Right, here we go, which isn't unusual. Have I lost you guys? Are you still there?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes. Stop. Good.
There we are.
Right. There we go. So what I want us to do is go back to the image. I want us to look at Mayborough Henge. I haven't got an exact location of it today because this was a little bit rushed. But I want to talk a little bit about Mayborough Henge because it was mentioned. It is in Cumbria, and it's on you guys's doorstep. So we've still got to complete the Thornborough Henge stuff. Then we'll do the cursus and whatever. Right, so here we go. Share screen. Start now. And we'll go directly to my images. Gallery. Right, okay. If we go there, right. As you can see that there, you've got a bank ditch. This is the Stonehenge Cursus monument. This is the Cursus monument, which is at Stonehenge. That's the Cursus monument at Stonehenge, and it's very well. It's very much intact, and you can clearly see that it's got a linear bank and a ditch. Whilst some of them are just sort of curved and whatever, but they are endless. This is 100 meters across, and it's a substantial Cursus monument near Stonehenge, just north of Stonehenge, actually. So that's an example of that. And this is the site that I wanted to look at, Mayborough Henge. And then we've got this site, which is the Cursus monument at Thornborough. But this is what we're going to be doing at the very, very end. So this itself, interesting enough, we've got an image there. That is that the same site? Yeah, it is the same site. I was just trying to work out. Yeah, it's just a different angle. So you can clearly see stone standing in the middle there, stone standing in the middle there. And one of you is going to say, Carl, just sort of stop it. Right, so let's just give you a little bit of detail with this. And again, I want to do this now because just in case we don't ever have an opportunity to look at it again. And it's just something that I thought we could just chuck in there. But there's a lot of gen about this, so we'll see what we can do now. So the Mayborough Henge is a large prehistoric monument in the county of Cumbria. And I got a confession. I thought I'd heard of it, but when I'd looked at this, I hadn't heard of it up until now. So we're all learning. So the Henge is in care of English Heritage, a scheduled ancient monument. And as Margaret said, it's 400 meters from King Arthur's Round Table, Henge. King Arthur's Round Table, Henge. So location, it's if this makes any sense to you, it's around 1 mile south of Penrith and just a few hundred yards from the M6 motorway. That's nice. To be seen as components in a landscape dominated by steep-sided valleys and fast-flowing streams. Interesting. And I've got an image here of Mayborough and King Arthur's Round Tables. So we look at this again. This site of Mayborough Henge consists of a single circular bank, possibly built using cobblestones from the rivers. Interesting. So it goes on to say, unlike other henge monuments where earth from the digging of a ditch is piled up to form a bank, Now, I like that idea because it ties in with everything that I say. Because what I do say is all these sites have different meanings and different genres and different perspectives. Now, I've got to say this, that when archaeologists say all of these things were used for the same thing at the same time, that's nonsense, right? None of these were used for the same thing. None of them were all constructed at the same time. Some of these monuments were constructed maybe 100 years in part in different places, and they were constructed all across Britain, from the likes of Salisbury Plain, Arborough, banging over to Thornborough, Cumbria, all the way over to Orkney, and obviously some of the Hebridean Islands, and all built at different times for different reasons. So it's saying, interestingly enough, which doesn't actually, it says that there's no evidence of a ditch there, but that's a ditch. Yeah, so Margaret, can you help me out? Yeah, there's definitely a ditch in the middle there, isn't there? There.
I remember clambering over the bank, and then it's a big flat area with the one stone in the middle.
Is that a ditch?
I don't remember a ditch, to be honest.
It looks like a bloody ditch to me. Right, what I'm going to do, we're gonna leave the jury out there because this is new on me, right? So let's just not criticize. Let's just agree there's no ditch, but it looks like a ditch, right? Thanks for the giggle, Pat. We like a bit of controversy here. It estimates that the bank itself contains 20,000 tons of stone. And it says that many have been taken away over the years for other uses. Road building, nice. And also points to an alternative theory that suggests that the bank may have been formed by excavation and rearrangement of a glacial mound. Now, that's not something that I haven't come across before, because I do believe on the road driving from Furness all the way down to Barrow and Furness, isn't there a natural mound on the left on the road before you get to the bypass? You know what I mean, Andy? Glacial mound. Well, I've seen it anyway, loads of times. So
whereabouts you mean?
Right. So you've got the, you're going down to Barrow, right?
Yeah,
and you've got
the 590.
You've got the dual carriageway.
Yeah.
Just before you get to the dual carriageway, there's like a windy road bit, and in the field on the left, there's like a natural tub.
Yes, there is. There's a few round here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Andy, is that what we're talking about in regards to a glacial tub? And therefore, they're saying that would make sense, wouldn't it, Andy? That this might be a rearrangement of stones from a glacial tub. A glacial tub is basically a dump of stones.
Possibly, yes. Yes, because you're in the Eden Valley there as well. So, with this
I'm liking
one,
it.
so.
I'm liking this. So
and there is also quite a lot of evidence of these what you call them, I forgot what they're called now, those glacial dumps are actually being used. Moraines, yes. No, yeah, drumlins. Yes, thank you.
Oh, drumlins.
Yeah, there's a Boltonley Sands. There was a dig on a drumlin by Dig Ventures. That was a Bronze Age mound as well, but it was actually a real, excuse me, a real drumlin. So, and there's quite a few that look like drumlins but are round. And you're thinking, well, that's not a drumlin then, you know.
Exactly. So we're loving this, how we interpret the drumlins, the glacial sense of naturality, man-made creation, sort of inference in interpretation, and all the rest of it. So I'm liking this. And it says about this, the bank is up to 6.5 meters high, 7 meters high, and 50 meters across at its base. Well, that's quite substantial, isn't it? So quite a substantial henge. Now, can I just interject? Right, we're saying this is a henge monument, right? But if there's no ditch inside the bank, is it still a henge monument? And the answer is yes. Because there are some that's in with interpretation. There's a single monolith of 3 meters high in the middle, 2.8 meters in the middle. So you can see it there. There she is. There she blows. Now, this again is about interpretation. According to a certain Thomas Pennant, in the 1700s, there had been 4 standing stones in the center, marked on his 1769 plan. And a further 4 at the entrance. So this was then coming into the category of Arbelow, which is obviously miles and miles away. There's a chap called Robert Hutchinson in 1773. He said about the stones, he says, the inhabitants in the neighborhood say that within the memory of man, 2 other stones of similar nature and placed in a kind of angular figure with the stone now remaining. So it's there somewhere, what it would have been, were to be seen there, but as they were hurtful to the ground, were destroyed and removed. But as they were hurtful to the ground, were destroyed and removed. Oh, they were. Is that as they were hurtful? Well, right. They must mean they hurried to the ground and removed, so they were destroyed. It says that again, back to some other notes. It says about the center is slightly domed. Now we don't get that. That ties in with this idea there is a natural mound. And raises and the possibility the original site may have been a stone circle destroyed with other stones. So yeah. So the entrance itself. So if we so never eat, presuming obviously the east. And hang on a minute. Is there no second exit? Right, we should have done a bit more research on this. The entrance is due east of the center of the henge and frames the rise of the equinox of the sun. Suggests that they were very similar to Castlerig. The eastward-looking entrance also points to just to the north of King Arthur's Round Table, the other site that we mentioned. No proper excavation has been done at Mayborough, so it is difficult to date the henge with any certainty, but we've got Neolithic and Bronze Age axes that have been found nearby. A magnetometer survey has actually been undertaken to confirm any stones and to assess the presence of a ditch, internal or external. To confirm, oh right, I haven't got that survey yet. Oh bugger. So obviously no, we don't really know why it was built. However, it's saying about the proximity to the river and the spring. Again, that thing about water and the spring, it's a proximity to the spring may be to do with birth of life and human life circle rituals. But then again, there's going to be springs next to lots of these. It says that the stones used are a mixture of pink, blue, grey, and quartz stone. So we're back in the day. I think what we're going to do, we're going to finish with this last thing here. It links us then directly back into Thornbury Henge, back to the Henge Monument, and then finally onto the cursus at Thornborough. So the visual impact awe-inspiring. The use of this combination of coloured stones relates to the deliberate symbolic incorporation of the Neolithic worlds of the living and the dead through solar and lunar rituals that incorporate water. Right, okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll chuck all that in there, everything. The same combination of red, black, blue and white stones can be found at Long Meg. And here we go, it's talking about the interpretation of white. And using a set coloration, which then links in. So obviously the coloured stones, and then when you look at Thornborough, you think about the gypsum being used as covering stones or covering the bank at the Thornborough, because it was an earthen bank, wasn't it? So you put gypsum on the outside. Mayborough's alignment to the equinox sun also suggests a cosmological use similar to that of Long Meg. Now, we've mentioned Long Meg a few times. That's going to be a Bronze Age thing, but I'm glad that we've done that, right? It's not taken us too far away, but maybe I should have left that for another day. But the King Arthur's Round Table looks fascinating. And I'm just going to I'm just going to see. It would be nice to do that one because it classes that as a henge monument, King Arthur's Round Table. So the date of that are very interesting. So we should maybe come back to that again. Then this landscape, right? So back to the landscape that we were supposed to be doing. Don't worry, Peter. See, you've probably got used to my ways by now. Everyone else has. Right. So what I'd like to do is go back to the images and discuss about how our other site of Thornborough was actually saved from quarry, and then we'll do the Cursus Monument. And then, thank God, we can call it a day. Good. Right. So there we go. And what we need to do is I would like to try and bring archaeology into sort of conflict with development, and I want to do this. You might not think it's relevant, but I do. So if we go back through our images and we look maybe at yeah, oh no, let's look at this bigger landscape, right? So as you can tell from this Ordnance Survey map 1 to 50,000 scale map, extensive quarrying has impacted much of the monument setting to the north and west of the henges. Well, clearly that's clear, isn't it? And you can clearly see that these sand pits and gravel pits have completely altered the landscape around the henge monuments. Very interesting. The site lies within the wider Northfield quarry. So Northfield, so you can see all that there, stuff going on. Exploited for gravel by Tarmac North Limited. And it goes to say that in the early part of the noughties, just a decade or so ago, Tarmac planned to extend its quarrying operations to a 110-acre site, less than a mile east of the henges. So basically, but they were expanding, go to all the way over to Ladybridge, where the 29 is. They're going to do all that. So basically, the whole landscape would be framed by modern quarrying. Preliminary investigations. So if we go over to where they got Ladybridge there, preliminary investigations of this area of land to discern its archaeological significance suggested that it may have been a location of ritual Neolithic encampments, possibly used by those people who built or visited the henges. Well, that is rather interesting. And I'm going to expand on that. People had to live somewhere. So let's just move away from that idea of encampments, permanent occupation. Opponents of the plan, and naturally there would be, claimed that if permission was granted for this area to be quarried, much of the remaining context, the information of the henges would be lost. Much more of the setting of the henges would be lost. So in other words, it's like saying, well, let's just build another road directly alongside Stonehenge, and we'll just put a road through the Cursus Monument. You know what I mean? And it's just like, let's put a couple of roads here and there. If we want to do a comparison with the likes of Stonehenge. And there was a massive amount of controversy because there was this idea that these sites would directly affect themselves, not just over by Ladybridge, they directly affected. A campaign led by local people and concerned archaeologists attempted to persuade Tarmac and North Yorkshire County Council to guarantee protection of the area. British planning and archaeological guidelines prefer preservation in situ of archaeological remains. In cases where this is not possible, such as quarrying, preservation by record is an option involving archaeological excavation. So in other words, you know what I'm going to say. So if you excavate a site, it's no longer deemed as an archaeological site. It's because you've got a record and therefore you can remove it. So, these sites could have been directly affected. Campaigners argued that further excavation and subsequent quarrying will destroy the ritual landscape completely. In 2002, Tarmac North Limited expressed an intention to apply for planning permission to quarry Thornborough Moor. Well, you can see Thornborough Moor's there, telephone box. Thus intending to quarry right up to the edge of the designated scheduled ancient monument. So if we actually look at the realities of this, right? Let's just look at the realities of this, right? And let's just go with a bit more scenic. Nope, Bah, 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 bah. Right. Can you imagine? Right, that's all protected, right? So what we'll do, we'll put a quarry basically a few meters away from the edge of that boundary, right? What we'll do, you can see that there. There's the lake there that's already been quarried out. So that's basically alongside the boundary. So what we'll do, we'll put a little bit of, and what when you think about it, you could think, oh right, we've preserved the monument, right? We can do whatever we like outside it, but then all we've got is a elongated line with 3 monuments on, and obviously by displacement of the water level either side, that's going to destroy the value of the site. That's going to eventually denude the archaeology, and it might be subsidence of the remains as well. So the idea of tarmac coming directly close to this would have been, I believe, catastrophic. And obviously what we would have done, we would have lost the Cursus monument completely that we're going to be doing in a short while. So planning permission to quarry Thornborough Moor, which caused what the Times newspaper labelled as unprecedented protests and a 10,000 signature petition against the proposal. In March 2005, Tarmac stated it would not seek to apply for planning permission to quarry this site for at least 10 years. Oh, that's nice of them. And that was in 2002. So 10 years have actually gone by now. The period covered by North Yorkshire County Council's Minerals Plan. In February 2006, North Yorkshire County Council turned down Tarmac's application to extend quarrying to the Ladybridge farm site, obviously north of here. Later in 2006, Tarmac submitted a revised planning application to North Yorkshire County Council. The revised planning for Ladybridge, which is adjacent to the north. So if we go back to that again, sorry about this, if anyone has an epileptic fit. Reduce the proposal area. So in other words, for sand and gravel extraction from 45 hectares to 31 hectares, avoiding the southwestern section of the site to address concerns raised by archaeology. The application was approved in 2000, in February 2007. So in other words, what we're talking about is archaeology has had an impact in stopping the advancement on the other side of that road, the other side of the 29, the other side of that road. Later in 2007, campaign group Friends of Thornborough requested a judicial review of the planning permission due to a number of procedural irregularities. In response, North Yorkshire Council ruled the permission to be fatally flawed and withdrew the permission previously granted. So for once, it shows the power of archaeology to actually stop things, to actually keep this landscape. Okay, argue back at me. Why do we need all this archaeological landscape? Why do we need to preserve these things? And the answer is, we don't look at individual monuments anymore. We look at the landscape. We look at the interconnection with all those bits of the landscape that we've mentioned. We look, for example, at the primeval bits of the landscape, the very ancient bits that haven't been touched. We think about the living landscape, the labourers around the living landscape. We think about the settlement sense of the landscape. We think about this sense of ritual and ceremonial landscapes. You know, if you move any of these elements, then all you've got is these 3 monuments, which is not what we want. In November 2016, North Yorkshire County Council Planning Committee agreed with the owners Tarmac to approve further quarrying in return for preservation. So in other words, you give us this archaeology and you can do other stuff. The site of the Thornborough henges and 90 acres of the surrounding land, which would eventually be handed over to a public body. This agreement saw control of the 2 henges on land owned by Tarmac past to historic England. The site will be operated by English Heritage and will enable public access. It will join the National Heritage Collection of English Heritage Properties. The 3rd henge remains in private ownership. So, I'd say it's actually gone into the hands of English Heritage. Oh yeah, English Heritage protects it. It's scheduled, but it's quite happy being a lump of trees anyway, which is fine. However, the downside is that now with this area of the landscape preserved and the 90 acres, right? Tarmac will have permission to develop wherever else they can. So that's basically a mitigation. We're gonna lose some archaeology, but we've saved everything else. So we can't be too greedy and keep everything. That's, as an archaeologist, what I've seen over the years. Right now, cut my gob for a minute. I want us to look at the Cursus monument, which is the Thornborough Cursus monument, which we will now do. And I'll tell you a little bit about what the Cursus. So if we go, there it is. So we've got the central one there, and there we go. There is aerial photography. And there it is, going to Thornborough, sort of marked on the old maps with some boundaries there. So if we go to there, this is what we extrapolate. This sort of 1 mile length of sort of just a little bit north of the river itself, not actually reaching the river. You can see it's curved there, can't you? It's rather curved. So if we look at this now, and we go to I gotta get my bearings. Right, okay, get my bearings. Right. And then we'll just mention a little bit about Cursus monuments and whatever. But actually that's what I should do now. As you can tell, I'm all over the place. So the idea of the Cursus monuments, monumental Neolithic structures resembling ditches or trenches across Great Britain and Ireland, mainly akin to our landscape in Britain rather than the continent. But there are examples on the continent. Let's not just, I think, northern France, actually. The relics found within them indicate that they were built between sometime in the region of 5,400 and 5,000 years ago. I believe a lot earlier than that, but that's something else. Now, the word cursus or circus or circus monument, or cursus, C is pronounced K, so it's cursus rather than circus or cursus, as in the Latin K. This is a name coined by the William Stukeley in 1723, before he went a bit nuts. So the antiquarian who compared the Stonehenge cursus to a Roman chariot racing track or circus. So in other words, because they resemble like a long chariot track with banks that you could actually watch chariots going around, right? This is where it came from, the name Cursus monument. Cursuses. And again, it would be good to sort of look at some really good examples next week. But the most famous one is the Stonehenge Cursus. But the one in Dorset is 6 miles bloody long, right? And that sort of going up and down. Cursus monuments themselves, they don't actually follow anything on the landscape. They just cut it across it. You've got a river there, frigging go across it. You've got a bit of a hillock. You just go up the hill and you go back down again, and you just go directly through the hedge. That's a Cursus monument. Now, I do know that it's 9:45, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to not extrapolate anymore. More about Cursus is next week, so we're going to do this Thornborough Cursus monument now, in the midst of the Great Henge monument of Thornborough, specifically the central henge. Archaeologist Ian Longworth said there was built a still earlier structure known as a cursus. So interestingly for archaeologists, we know that the date of the Cursus monument predates the henge, therefore the henge is later. So the Cursus monument is a lot older. Now the henge is built directly on the Cursus monument. We can think what that means next week. This giant monument was one of the earliest such sites located in Britain. And this is rather interesting, reading that this is a Cursus monument, one of the earliest monumental sites in Britain. What a statement. This was a ceremonial avenue, right? We've used the word avenue. Just bite your tongue on that one, because there's also avenues in the Neolithic period. Running for nearly a mile in a northeast southwesterly direction, the avenue is defined by ditches 144 feet apart, with a bank running along the inside of each ditch. So a bank running alongside the inside of each ditch. So let's do a pat. A ditch, bank, flat area, ditch. Start again. Flat area, ditch, bank, flat area, bank, ditch, flat area. Pat, we've done it. So the ditches are now completely filled with ploughed soil. So obviously this is what happens first. The ditch and any material from the bank ends up in the ditch. As with other Cursus monuments in the county and across Britain, were discovered from the air as two dark lines in the cereal crop, probably used for ritual ceremonies. No clues remain to show what actually took place. I actually completely disagree with that 100%. I actually think there's something else, but you'll go on to that next week. This Cursus monument itself, so there we go, a bit of an aerial view there, not very clear, I do apologise. That's it in the mapping. Can you see the lines followed in the mapping? So this mapping is going to be, I think, the pre-1900 Ordnance Survey series maps, maybe 18, maybe as early as 1878 or something. But anyway, the Cursus runs almost as at right angles to the alignment of three Thornborough henges on the south side of the central henge, and was first found through aerial photography in 1945 by, I love this name, by a J.K. St. Joseph. Can't make it up. And it was also refound in 1952. Not this one, but actually, could that be it? It might be. When excavation work was carried out, a crouched burial was found in a stone kist within the southwestern end of the Cursus. Now, can I remind you that people use the Cursus monuments for other things after the initial purpose of what they were used for? Again, next week. This end of the monument is rounded. There we go, it's rounded. A bit like a sort of a cigarette end, a cigar end, right? Its northeastern end has not been located, so it just keeps going. It might be over a mile, don't know. Paul Devereux in 1989 said that the monument, which had become silted up and grass covered by the time the henge was built, had two main orientations, with a curve, a linear, irregular section just to the east of the henge. So one thing I would say that now this is a really interesting statement to make. It was already an ancient site before the henge monument was constructed. I like it. So in other words, it was bloody old to the people who actually built the henge monuments. So it might be 6,000 years old. It's said that in 1969, thought that the Cursus actually went all the way down to the River as we mentioned in our original discussion. It stops some distance beforehand, most believe, as you can actually see. It does stop before the river, right? So the first analogy that we gave earlier on was wrong, but some archaeologists say that another version goes all the way to the river. They whatever. It stops some distance beforehand, though may obviously have had some important relationship with the waters. It seems that other Cursus monuments have been found close by the henges more recently. More about them when we discuss this next week. So what I'm going to do, we're just going to have a quick look at the images, and then today is done. We've done quite a lot today. So again, from old mapping, you can lots of detail from old mapping, and look at that there. The top, we didn't see this earlier on. The top henge there, it does look a lot better preserved. It's been a lot better mapped, isn't it? It's a lot, and there doesn't seem to be an entrance in and out. But yeah, and there seems to be a little bit more detail with our henge in the middle. There seems to be another outer ditch there. Again, interesting to see this from earlier maps. And again, actually, do you know I can date this because I've got exactly the same map on the screen. This is actually I can date this. This is 1945, because it's exactly the same clarity of a map I've got on my wall of what we've got here. So yeah, that's 1945. And again, looking at that, the detail, and you've got what seems to be something coming in there, an alignment as well. We did actually see that on the earlier image. Remember I mentioned something about an avenue? An avenue is basically an alignment of stones with sometimes a ditch and a bank associated with them, but an avenue is an alignment of stones rather than what we're talking with a Cursus monument. Again, that's another bit of our Neolithic world. Again, we're last bit of Mayborough henge. Be interested to know if that is a ditch inside. And again, another one there. Again, this is a linear ended Cursus monument than the one at Thornborough. Again, this is a massively important site. This is, they call it the Stonehenge of the North without the stones. There you go. That's good. Well, there's 3 henges. So, yeah, Trump Stonehenge anytime. I don't like Stonehenge. I'm not a fan of Stonehenge. I'm not going to make a profession of any, I don't like it. Then again, this is our central one. And this is, again, more of these, as you can see it. And again, different clarities. I'm loving this sort of idea of clarities that in different sort of conditions, different sort of times of year, the southern one is either clear, like it is now, or it's not so clear. So this is probably, I would say August. This is probably end of June, as the crops are still growing. And again, giving you more of a perspective, this is late August, I would say, because it's quite parched. Again, we're seeing some other things on that image, not really sure what. We've got, do you remember those stone sort of alignment there? That's that there. We could have come back to this site again. We should do. And again, more of that. We've seen that. This sort of alignment of Orion, that's another lecture. Again, this as well. We can see it, clearly see that there. This sort of alignment. And actually, avenues can be stakes. They don't need to be stones. They can be a timber. And the one point I was trying to make earlier on, but I don't know, I've distracted myself, was that sometimes permanence can be seen in soil. Soil is permanent. When you move a stone, it's gone, right? So our ancestors sometimes believe that permanence is in earth. You're born, you die, you go into the earth. That's permanence. That's a bit of a conceptual thing there. And again, looking at this sort of landscape there, you not really much in the way of our Cursus monument there, but obviously we're hoping we're seeing that alignment there, sort of something going across. But we've got the central site there. Again, we discovered that our northern one was better preserved. And again, there we go. And again, that sort of alignment there, that sort of line there, sort of loads of different sort of alignment type things, theories within the landscape. And field walking today. So that's basically it. So what we're going to do, oh, can I quickly just show you a video? Here we go. There we go, making a door panel. There we go. And there it is. There it is. I did this today. There you go. Layering it on, lathering it on. And there you go. There's a panel, door panel. And there's another door panel. Right, okay then. So I got to show you what I get up to in the day. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to sure, yeah, we go. I hope we're back with it. Are you seeing me on the screen? Good. Excellent. Margaret.
I've no idea what they were for. Were they processional routes, or I don't know what they were for.
Well, the Cursus monuments, that's exactly what we're doing next week.
Oh, okay. I mean, they talk about, they're also called avenues, aren't they?
No, avenues are something completely different. Right, I did say there was a bit of a confusion. Right, avenues, right, just sort of, avenues are basically, you can have avenues of parallel stones with a space in the middle, or parallel timbers, or you can have sort of the avenue at Stonehenge is actually a bank, but there's a Stonehenge, there's an avenue with some stones, and there's a Cursus monument. There's 2 different monuments. An avenue does have breaks in it and sort of timbers and stones and stuff. The Cursus monuments have nothing other than a bank and a ditch. Those are the two differences. I'm wearing
I
myself
noticed
out.
there's an avenue, or there was an avenue at Shap. I don't know if you know Shap in Cumbria.
I've travelled through Shap.
Yeah, poor you. It's like a stone-lined avenue. Most of the stones have gone to build Shap Abbey, but apparently it was quite something at the time, and it links the many stone circles in that area.
Shap is in S-H-A-P. That's not right, is it?
Yes.
Oh, that is right.
S-H-A-P.
Yeah, I used to pass through Shap really quickly.
Good.
Right. Okay. No. Okay. No. That's basically an avenue.
Quite different.
An avenue is very different from a Cursus monument. An avenue is a different. There's about 1,000 years in different age-wise than a Cursus monument. Cursus monuments. There's not Cursus monuments, and literally there's nothing really to be found there other than a bank and a ditch. But we'll look at the significance next week. And then avenues. There's loads of palaver. So those are the big difference.
Okay.
Right, so let's do so that's you done, Margaret, yeah?
Yeah.
Right, let's do a Peter C, and then we'll do a David R. Right, so Peter first.
No, that's fine with me.
No, we're doing a Peter C.
Oh, you didn't say that.
No, nothing really other than just I know that area around Thornborough, there's talking of the landscape and just sort of going out on a bit of a bigger scale, you've got other things like the Devil's Arrows in the area and other large henge monuments as well. And I was just wondering about what you thought about places with concentrations of these remains where you find, you know, lots of big monuments in quite relatively small areas.
Do you want my realistic answer? The answer is that there were lots more places like this. It's except that well, if you quickly look at this analogy, you look at the Nessa Brodga, right? But if you start looking at across the whole of mainland Orkney, there are lots of other areas across Orkney that have concentrations of archaeologists. It just seems that it's better preserved at the Nessa Brodga because very few people live there. If we look at, say, Salisbury Plain, there's very few people living at Salisbury Plain. That's why the archaeology is still well preserved. When you look at Avebury, for example, when people start to move in and around Avebury, they take away the entire Brockhampton Avenue, right? So you start to think, well, okay. And you start, okay, you are right, but there are other concentrations of archaeological sites across Britain. For example, Cornwall. You look at the Penzance Peninsula, that it's just chocker with stone circles and everything all over the place. But when you go to places like London, there isn't these sites in London, and the simple answer is that London was just a marsh in the past, right? And what we've got to do, we've got to look at the analogy that lots of, for example, East Anglia, lots of that landscape has been reclaimed from the sea. And what you need to do is you need to look at a prehistoric map. When we look at Argyll, and we look at Kilmartin in Argyll, and we look at the entire landscape of Neolithic carvings everywhere, these landscapes are more plentiful than we realise. It's just that lots of them have been removed and denuded and destroyed, and this is why. The best analogy is of a political party, right? But for example, the Liberal Party used to be everywhere in Britain, and now it's in very few places in Britain because it's been denuded and made less and less. This is a metaphor. And I would say it's the same about the prehistoric landscape. When people start to move into these landscapes, they remove everything. You've got a point in what you're saying, but the other point as well, there's a lot more of it. And we've lost a lot of it.
Yeah.
Remember, probably 10% of our prehistoric landscape still survives. So then there's another 90% that's gone.
We visited those Devil's Arrows when we were up at York.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Yes, you did.
Next to a
Did you-
big housing estate, weren't they?
Yeah.
We'll come on to that in a minute. Andy, have I answered your question, Peter?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Let's do David. David, you next.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you for David. Thank you very much. And right. Okay. Who's next? Andy, go for it.
They're interesting. Actually, interesting how certain areas have survived more than others, and
Yeah.
and there is a lot around that Yorkshire area of all sorts. And then those devil's whatever arrows are really strange.
Yes.
I have no idea why they're there or what they got there, but I suppose it's because it's not in the middle of a plain that everybody's seen for hundreds of years, and they're not that familiar with them. So you're thinking, oh, what are these doing here? Oh, there's another one over there. What's that doing here? Why are they lined up like this? As we all know about Stonehenge and all, and surrounding monuments there because they've been there for a while and they're very open. But these are all covered up by trees and valleys and houses in the Yorkshire. You can't really see them so easily, and less accessible as well. So.
And the other point as well is, when we're talking about the barrow diggers, we'll be doing more about barrow diggers in 2 weeks. And you're thinking, well, there's hundreds of these barrows and now there's hardly any there now.
Yeah.
And for example, in the Vale of Glamorgan, when I was a child, I used to have a map on my wall with pins. My mother didn't realise that these pins were going directly into the plaster. But I had a map on my wall, and it would be like bits of tumuluses here, bits of tumuluses here. And it'd be but there was a whole area that there were no tumuluses, right? It happened to be the Landau airfield and RAF St. Athan, which was one of the biggest airfield sites in Britain. There were literally thousands of planes there parked ready to go out in 1943, 1944, 1945. Basically, they flattened the entire landscape. It's gone. All the burial monuments are gone. They flattened it all to build an airfield. So, now there's nothing there. So the thing is, there were lots there. Now there's nothing there. And we've just got to remember that what we're seeing is the emboldened embodiment of just a fraction of our archaeological archive. And when we're talking about hundreds of thousands of archaeological sites in Britain, that's a speck, that's a pinprick in the. And the other thing as well is when we're talking about why the hell do we need to save so much archaeology, is because we've only got 10% of it left. So are you guys all there?
Yeah.
We've only got 10% of it left. So it's and having landscapes of archaeology like Thornborough, like Salisbury Plain, like Avebury, like the Durrington Walls and all the rest of it is now very, very rare. But pre 1945, there was lots more of it, and unfortunately, we've got to now preserve what we've got. In fact, the scheduled ancient monument of monuments, everything Neolithic in Britain is meant to be protected, and then Bronze Age, it's something like not all Bronze Age sites are protected, and then Iron Age, not all Iron Age sites are protected, and by the time we get to the medieval period, it's only a fraction of medieval sites that are protected because there's so much of it. So, right, who else now? I think I've answered Andy, and I think we've got Pat left, and Pete's already, Pete S. I told Pete S for interrupting Pete C. Pete, if you want to say something out, Pete S, say it. If not, Pete S, I'll see you tomorrow. Right, so now we'll do, well, now, no touching Pat's knee, Pete. Pat.
No comment. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm going to say it's only 10:05 tonight. We managed to finish 15 minutes earlier than we did last week, but it's still 10:05. So if there's no other questions from David, Margaret, Andy, and wonderful Peter C and S and Pat, if there's no other questions, that's been a really mixed one tonight. There's been a mixed bag. Thank you very much for your support, and I will see you all next Tuesday at 7:30. Thank you very much.
Okay.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
My
Bye.
pleasure. No. And a partridge in a pear tree. Oh, David, you're the last one.
Yeah.
How is it? Oh, right. I was going to say something. David, never mind. We don't have to have a chat. Anyway, how was it? I thought he was going to say something. Oh God, never mind. We lost our Dave. Right, okay. So what we've got, I'm going to look in the chat box. There's loads on a Wednesday, so nothing closed to everyone. Nothing there. Close to everyone. Do 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 do. Right, that's it. And that's it. Close. I'm going to put the fire on now. It's getting cold. Well, it's getting a bit chilly. Close. There you go. Done. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching today. There's been a lot today. We've covered a lot. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if there's any questions online. If there's anyone out still viewing online. Let's just see. There's 2 people watching online, so nobody's actually put anything online today. So what we're going to do, we're going to call it a day. Thanks for watching today. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for everybody's support. I'm off now, and we'll do more next week and tomorrow as well. Wednesday. What day is Wednesday? Wednesday's Wednesday. So I'll see you tomorrow. Take care, and thank you very much. Let's go. Let's get this off.